This is Jonathan Farrington. Welcome to the 2017 Top Sales Academy. Academy is just one example of a host of free initiatives you will find over at Top Sales World as we continue to pursue the original objective we started with more than 10 years ago, which is to redefine the parameters governing sales team performance. Our contributors have been carefully chosen, and each one of them brings a unique element of expertise and experience in specific sales disciplines. And that allows us to provide our visitors with a constant supply of best-of-breed resources, all refreshed daily. In effect, Top Sales World is the world's first online sales hypermarket with the shelves stacked with every conceivable resource frontline sales professionals and their managers could possibly need. Now, once again, this year's Academy faculty represents the brightest and the most successful sales experts on the planet, and they will be delivering leading-edge presentations that are short, sharp, and highly relevant, which leads me nicely into today's presentation, which is Sales Experience Drive Predictable Revenue, and it's presented by Barb Giamanco. And what Barb has said about her presentation in brief is, in Salesforce's State of Sales report, they note that 79% of business buyers say it's absolutely critical or very important to interact with a salesperson who is a trusted advisor, not just a sales rep, who adds value to their business. In this session, you're going to learn strategies for creating value-based experiences for buyers that lead to predictable sales outcomes. And before I hand over to her, a quick word about Barb. Barb heads up Social Center Selling. She's the co-author of the New Handshake, Sales Meets Social Media, and also the Harvard Business Review article, Tweet Me, Friend Me, Make Me Buy. Barb is known internationally as a leader in social selling. She's a sought-after sales and social media advisor and speaker, amongst many things. Welcome, Barb.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's good to be here.
Always good to have you back, Barb. Always good to have you back. I'm going to hand over to you now.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, welcome everybody. As Jonathan said, I'm going to talk with you about how sales experience drives that predictable revenue. And we're going to be talking about the experience factor in sales and what that means for you in terms of achieving those quota objectives. Jonathan's already done a great job introducing me, which I appreciate very much. Here's how you can connect with me. On Twitter, you can find me on LinkedIn, Barbara Giamanco, or visit the web or give us a call here in Atlanta. Would love to talk to you about your sales needs. Now, I want to start first by talking about why experience matters. Often when people are thinking about experience, they're thinking about customer experience. In other words, you bring a customer to close and now you start to do business with them, and then as things happen, or as was known in the past, customer service, you've got this group of people who are taking care of customers after the fact, and that's a good thing and that needs to continue. That being said, I've come to believe that the experience begins with the very first interaction that somebody has with your organization. That's typically going to be a salesperson who's on the front lines talking with prospects, people you want to do business with, or it could also be marketing. But why does that experience matter so much? It matters because we absolutely know that by 2020, and I would say it's probably already happening now, customer experience is going to actually eclipse price and product as that key brand differentiator. And it's really important that your salespeople are thinking about what kind of an experience they are creating from the very first moment they interact with someone. So I want to talk about what high-performing sales teams do that others don't. So Jonathan mentioned at the beginning the Salesforce State of Sales report. And what was cool about this year's report is that they noted that experience has now become a top sales benchmark. It is recognized among top performing sales teams that you've got to create a great experience from the very first moment you have a conversation with a prospect, and that continues all the way through the sales cycle. So you interact with someone, they agree to a sales meeting, now you have the sales meeting, you work through the decision-making process, you get to a win or not win situation, then they move to becoming a customer, and that cycle begins again. The other thing that's the report stated was that salespeople are more connected, they're more proactive. They also have the right technology and the right training to help them be successful. And they're smarter selling. In other words, they are following the right kind of a process, one that aligns with the buyer's journey, and they're also using predictive intelligence as a way to create those great experiences. Bottom line, these sellers are focused on delivering value and fresh insights. They're not coming in to do a feature pitch. They're not walking in to do a demo. They are proactively raising issues that should be of concern to buyers, but maybe buyers don't know about these things yet, or maybe they haven't considered them yet. Anyone can be reactive, but you want to set yourself apart by being that salesperson who is proactive. That's really what being a trusted advisor is all about. So as I already said, the sales experience begins with that very first interaction. And I'm not confident that salespeople and sales leaders are really looking at this seriously enough. Now, the sales experience has to be great throughout the entire process, as I just mentioned. And a lot of leaders continue to be concerned that they don't have enough qualified leads in the pipeline. Often the answer is to insist that reps call more people or send more emails. I don't believe it's more that makes the difference. I think it's the quality of those interactions that makes the difference. On any given day, executives tell me they receive hundreds of emails and phone calls from people they don't know, and they simply ignore them because there's nothing of value in those messages. There's nothing that says, hey, this is a salesperson I need to talk to because they're introducing a concept or an idea that I haven't considered. That in and of itself is worth a few minutes of my time to talk to them. So I think that a lot of organizations have an opportunity here to focus on that messaging, and that's what I'm going to talk a lot about today. So I love this quote from Anna Caselli and Britton. They talked in their newest book about the fact that whether you're a marketing professional focused on campaigns or a sales professional who needs to, get from those initial connections to conversations, a lot is riding on the message that you convey. And that's super important, whether it's voicemail or email or meeting somebody in person. That first message is going to get you to a go, no go. I mean, buyers are moving fairly quickly and they don't have a lot of time to train your people to do it right. They've got to do it right from the very beginning. And this just pretty much says it all. Serious Decisions has reported that according to sales management, the salesperson's ability or inability to communicate that value message is the biggest inhibitor keeping salespeople from achieving quota. Now think about that for a minute. So that value positioning starts with the very first interaction. But let's say your salesperson did a pretty good job and they were able to get someone to agree to a meeting. Well, you really got to be on your game when you're in that sales meeting because that's when it's going to really make a difference. If you're not able to communicate value, and I'm going to say this again as I do often, communicating value is not riffing through a list of features about your product or your service. Communicating value is demonstrating to buyers that you understand their business, that you are thinking differently, that you have looked at the competitive challenges, that you bring ideas that they hadn't considered because that's what's going to help you stand apart. Now, as you're thinking about your approach to reaching buyers, right, the prospecting side of the business is really super important. And a lot of sales leaders are insisting that their reps make a lot more phone calls and send a lot more emails, and that's great. And also today we have the ability to blend the approach by reaching buyers to include social channels. That's a good thing. But this isn't a good thing. We need to make sure that you stop spamming buyers with noise. That's all they're hearing, whether it's coming through email, the phone, could be LinkedIn, email. It's not the medium that matters. It's really the message that you convey that matters. Again, I speak to executives daily and they tell me that they just wipe out hundreds of messages from strangers, again, not communicating any kind of value to them. They just move on. To them, it's all noise. You sound like everybody else trying to pitch them. So why would they give you their time? The answer, they don't. What's important to remember as you think about creating this sales experience, starting with the messaging, is that you as a sales professional are a brand. You also represent your company's brand. So how you present yourself in every situation, online and offline, really makes a huge difference in whether or not a buyer will make a decision to choose to go with you or talk to someone else. As I said a moment ago, quality is what leads to better sales outcomes. Yes, you need to crank out a certain number of emails and phone calls. I understand that. For any sales leader listening, I would say maybe take a hard look at whether or not just measuring the number of calls and emails is the right KPI. Because the question is, after people are making all these calls and sending all these emails, are those activities translating into the right kind of sales outcome? In other words, a sales meeting. In large part, in the organizations that I'm talking with, that's not the case. And so what happens is people tend to default and say, well, if they just do more, if they just do a few more, that'll make the difference. No, it won't make the difference. The difference is how you approach buyers and the kind of message that you communicate to them and how well you present your brand offering, right, your value to them. And you've got to be thinking about it from the buyer's point of view. I also noticed there's this tendency, it doesn't seem to be changing as much as I would like to see it change, but here's the thing, you've got to, I think it's why account-based marketing, account-based selling, Craig Rosenberg calls it account-based everything. It's about target. It's about focus. You've got to focus on targeted buyers. That spray and pray approach is not an effective strategy. And to be fair to sales reps, I think sometimes they default to this because they've got this looming number hanging over their head. I've got to make X number of phone calls today. I've got to send X number of emails. And so they default to behavior that might help them check the box on those two KPIs, but it's not actually getting the sales meeting, which is the most important part of all of this, right? You're going to go to all this trouble to prospect and try and get sales meetings, and then of course in the sales meeting you really have to stand apart and create a great experience there as well. And once again, I'm going to say that if your reps are successful in getting those sales meetings, but then they get on the phone and they default to feature dumps or trying to rush somebody into a demo, you've just blown the experience, and it's highly likely that that's not going to move forward through the decision-making process. That's why I believe your message really matters. If you want to stand out, your people have to communicate the right kind of value from the very beginning. Now, I've talked about email and phone, but this applies to social media as well. Unfortunately, a lot of people have gotten caught up in this notion of social selling, which it is important to integrate social media into your sales process. That's only a small fraction of what it takes to be successful in selling. So yes, you can connect and engage with buyers in an online medium like LinkedIn as an example. Even there, though, it's the message that's going to make the difference. How do you interact? If you come in and you make a comment on, say, a social share that a buyer has put out there, this is a buyer you want to do business with. If they come in and rather than answering a question, start to pitch their product, that's a problem. If they try to use LinkedIn InMail to get to a buyer and simply connect with them and try to pitch the product, that's a problem. All of these things aren't creating a great sales experience. All they're doing is creating the opportunity for the buyer to just say, no, I have no interest in what you're doing. So whatever you're doing, whatever your communication is going to be, social channels, email, phone messages, they've got to be tailored to each buyer. So let's talk about that for a minute. I know people think this takes a long time, but actually it doesn't have to take a long time. You can actually do what I kind of call batch. You can batch your information. So let's say that you are focused on the healthcare industry. It's not difficult to go in and do due diligence using LinkedIn, other business intelligence tools like Discover.org or Inside View. It's not difficult to go and gather information about that particular industry and to understand what are some of the key trends today, maybe going into the future. It's not difficult to understand what some of the competitive challenges might be for anybody in healthcare today. Not too hard to understand what might be future opportunities like artificial intelligence. So you could gather that data and you could start to create a template, short by the way, whether it's email or phone, it should be short. And you could start to create a template that helped to craft a message that said to the executive who's in healthcare, you know, XYZ buyer, I understand that your industry is facing this unique challenge. We've done a few things to help people in similar situations. If you have some time, I'd love to chat with you about it. Or you might also take the opportunity to say, here's a white paper. I think you might be interested. It speaks to this challenge, which I'm confident you're probably facing. So you could have something like that kind of teed up. And then before you send the message to the individual, you just go and find a little piece of information, a little nugget about them personally, so that you really kind of tailor that. Now that does not have to take a long time. It takes a little pre-planning to dig around and find that industry information, but it's not difficult to find. And in fact, I would say to anybody in sales today, you are so lucky. You are so fortunate, because back in the day when I started, we didn't have the ability to go to the internet and research things really, really quickly. So this is an exciting time. You have the tools, you have the ability to do what you need to do. Now, when you're crafting that message, you need to think about it from the buyer's point of view. Scrap the history lesson, okay? Buyers can go to the web and check the information out. We already know that they're going and doing a lot of self-education. So, you know, you don't need to get into all the details about your corporate history. It rarely is necessary, especially in the beginning. As I said, ditch the feature pitch. This is not what buyers care about. A recent demand gen report just reiterated that buyers are looking for people who are trusted advisors. They're looking for sellers who can be consultative, help them solve their problems. You know, they don't need the feature dump. Again, they've probably, or somebody on their team has already kind of checked you out, or you wouldn't be there in the meeting. This is your opportunity to demonstrate that you're bringing something different to the table, more valuable to that buyer than the feature pitch. This is one of my personal favorites. Skip the gimmicks. There are a lot of people out there training folks on what I would call email hacks or phone hacks. You know, ridiculous subject lines, trying to pretend like somebody's already replied to your message when they haven't, pretending you have an appointment scheduled when you don't. These things don't bode well for you. When you're starting off a relationship, do you really want to be starting off that relationship with a lie? It doesn't make any sense. So skip the gimmicks. In fact, I just talked to one gentleman who said that the rep was new with the company and called him and said, listen, he was in placement, and he said, we've placed people in your organization at some of the lower levels. I'd like to talk to you about what else we could do for your company. Well, look, folks, that stuff can be verified fairly easily, which this buyer did, and discovered that this company had not done business with them at all. So call me old-fashioned, but trying to start a sales relationship with the foundation being a lie is not a good thing. When we think about those emails, use good subject lines, not things like call tomorrow at 10 a.m., can I get a few minutes of your time, I haven't heard back from you when it's the first message you've ever sent. You know, steer clear of the so-called breakup emails. Some people think that that's funny. I don't. I think it lacks a lot of professionalism. You know, if a buyer is not responding to you, maybe there's a reason why. Maybe they're just not interested. Maybe you haven't done a good job communicating value. Maybe you haven't done a good job saying, hey, this first interaction is going to tell me all I need to know about the overall experience in working with somebody. Do I want to move forward? So Buyers may not be ready today. Please skip the hacks. A stupid breakup email is going to work in your favor. If somebody's not interested right now, just put them in your nurture campaign. I also think you don't hound buyers. I get the emails too where, I'm getting things like, well, I've sent you 3 emails and I haven't heard back. Well, guess what? Buyers are not obligated to stop everything that they're doing and respond to you if you have no relationship with them. There are lots of other ways to create great experiences, and if you really want to get response, then you can think about cultivating referrals and securing introductions. There's lots of ways to go about getting in front of people. So again, skip those gimmicks. Your job is to grab interest, and you do that by communicating what's in it for the buyer. You've got to demonstrate the relevance and talk with them about things that they care about. I mentioned the healthcare example. What business or economic trend could impact their business? That's competitive insight that a buyer would probably pay attention to. Don't assume they know. Buyers get caught up in their own world. Maybe they don't know. You could think about future opportunities. I happen to know that artificial intelligence is huge in healthcare. Right? They're really starting to get into it, and going forward, there are lots of other applications for artificial intelligence in healthcare. It could be taking care of the elderly, helping to make sure that they don't miss their medications and that sort of thing, or their doctor's appointments. It could be all sorts of other ways, but healthcare is ripe for artificial intelligence. Maybe that's an opportunity for you to bring some insights to a buyer regarding that topic. Maybe you have an industry study that you could provide specific market data to them that they would be interested in. Maybe it's leadership best practices in their industry or new trends in performance. I think you get the idea. You need to spend a little bit of time thinking about what that buyer cares about. Unfortunately, a lot of the reason why your experience is falling flat, especially from the very first interaction, is because most of what's being communicated is what you want to sell. And you've got to flip that to think about what the buyer cares about most. So here's an example. When sales VPs turn to us, they're trying to solve challenges of qualified leads and meeting acceptance rates. In as little as 6 weeks, right? In as little as a few weeks, performance will improve through better messaging, the people skills, and process. Now, I could use that as an opportunity to start out. Maybe that's not the first line. Maybe I bring some sort of a, listen, I am saying, hey, I understand that you've got a challenge here. CSO Insights continues to report that about 48% of sales leaders are very concerned because they don't feel they have enough qualified leads in the pipeline, and certainly meeting acceptance rates is a big deal because if you don't have a sales conversation, in most cases, unless you're a SaaS company selling online, it's going to be tough to sell your product or service. So I'm trying to capture the sales VP's attention. Then I'm giving them a little bit of a benchmark of what they could expect if they worked with us. Now, is it perfect? No. Could I spend a little more time on it? Yes. For purposes of our conversation today, though, I just wanted to give you an idea of what it could look like versus what we typically get, which is, hi, I'm Barb Giamanco from so-and-so. Let me tell you all about our product. Oh, if you'd like to learn more, click this link to watch a video. And when you'd like to schedule an appointment, click this link. All I can say about that is lazy, 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 and guaranteed to earn you a delete. Frankly, in today's competitive environment, how you sell is so much more important than what you sell. What do you know about the buyer's business? What problem do you really solve? Why should the buyer care? What happens? How does it impact their business if they do nothing? What expertise do I need to demonstrate? How do I gain their commitment to give up some of their valuable time? These are some of the questions you need to be asking yourself before you engage with people. Those kinds of questions are what lead you to create the sales experience that continues to drive the predictable revenue. It doesn't happen when you get to the sales meeting. If you're lucky to get there, it happens the first moment you connect. From there, you nurture this great experience and continue that all through the process. Because remember, at any point in the process, the buyer can decide to opt out. They could make a go, no-go decision. You might think the sales meeting went well and you walk out of there thinking you got a great opportunity and the buyer's thinking, why did I waste my time with that? Google calls that ZMOT, the zero moment of truth. So think about how you're creating an experience that says to the buyer, hey, I want to continue this process. We've got some other people we've been talking to, but not this person. I want to talk to this person. They're sharp, so we're going to keep moving forward. It's important to remember that more is more. It's not necessarily better, right? So again, it gets back to, sure, you've got to have quantity, absolutely. And you need to make sure that those interactions are very high quality because buyers have a lot of choices today. That's the thing. If you didn't know this by now, there's a lot of choices. And there are very few industries that I'm aware of where there is not a lot of competition. And so you have to look different. You have to behave differently. You have to come to buyers in a different kind of way. You've got to really stand at a different level. You have to make it clear to a buyer it's worth their time to talk to you. So from my point of view, it's really important to invest the time to do it right. Don't blow off those initial interactions thinking they mean nothing. They mean everything. I could spend an entire segment talking about all the communication I see happening on social channels, LinkedIn specifically, where this topic of spam is high. And even buyers weigh in saying they don't understand why salespeople don't get it that sending them messages out of the blue that speak to what the buyer or the seller wants to sell and gives the buyer no indication of what's in it for them. It's mind-boggling, really, that people continue to waste this opportunity. So don't let that be you. Don't blow it off and think it doesn't matter because it really does matter. You rarely do get a second chance. If you don't make a good first impression in that interaction, it could be online as well. Let's say the buyer has posted a blog post, published a post, and you come in to join the conversation, but your comment makes it clear you have a self-serving agenda. I have one of those sitting in my LinkedIn inbox messages in the notifications area. I posted a particular article I really like. It's from my good friend Joanne Black. She talks about the importance of referrals and selling, which I believe in. And she's not a fan of cold calling. That's it. If you follow Joanne's work, you know that. And this gentleman comes in and he doesn't chime in with his thoughts around the topic and this and that. He makes a clear pitch for what he does, which clearly is selling lead generation services that's all about cold calling. That's exactly what you don't want to do. Now, assume that I'm the corporate buyer he's trying to get in front of. Boom, he just lost his chance because it was clear to me that all he wanted to do was brag about how his cold calling service got results, and that's why he disagreed with the author. A better approach would have been to say, cold calling can work, but of course I recognize it doesn't work for everyone. There was a whole different way you could have spun that to demonstrate some expertise and provide perspective, but no, he decided to try and shortcut and make the pitch all about him. And that's exactly what does not create a great sales experience. So, in the short time that we've had today, I hope you've come to appreciate that sales experience makes a difference. The numbers are out there. Those people who can create a great experience from the first moment they interact with a prospect through to the sales conversation, all the way through the decision-making process, and that means interacting with the multiple buyers throughout that process, helping to navigate through the close and the contract cycle and the doing business cycle, and then the handoff to whoever in your organization is going to take care of the customer from that point forward and then beyond is so critical. Don't think that your opportunity starts when you get somebody to say yes to a sales meeting, because if you want to get the yes, it's what you do prior to that that makes the difference. So I hope this has been helpful. Love to have a personal conversation with anyone who is interested. You can certainly reach out to me and we'll refresh the contact details in a moment. But thank you so much for listening.
Barb, well done. Enjoyed that very much.
Thank you.
You know, as always, your central theme is quality over quantity.
Yes.
And you know, yeah, and you know something, this is a perfect example of how selling has changed in recent years. Because, you know, for so many years, the only metric that mattered, of course, was quantity, wasn't it? It was the
Yes.
number of calls, number of quotes out. And that sort of quixotic style of selling where the salespeople take a tilt at as many windmills as possible in the hope that they might eventually knock one over. And sadly, I think in most cases, this is an issue for sales management, because this is how sales managers used to sell when they were salespeople. And what they've done, they brought it with them into management, and they still insist on using that metric of quantity.
I couldn't agree more, and I personally believe that needs to change. I don't know how much oversight, Jonathan, is going into really looking deeply at, okay, I've got Barb as my rep, and she's hitting the numbers in terms of making the email, sending the emails, and making the phone calls. But she seems to have a pretty low conversion rate from activity to sales meeting. That should be a red flag, and somebody should be looking at that. Why is that? Is it the approach that the person is taking? Is the timing off? Is the message off? It's probably all three. And, that's where I think there's an opportunity for sales leadership, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, and I think we have a responsibility to try and educate sales managers and bring them up to date. One of the other big problems, of course, is that once sales managers get into that role, then it's not common for their education to continue.
Yes.
It's almost as if, okay, well, you've got your driving license now, you're a sales manager, that's it, you must know everything there is to know about selling. When, of course, that's absolutely so erroneous. I mean, it's awesome. But there we go. It remains a challenge, and we continue with the crusade. I think the other underlying message, you touched on customer experience management, which, as you know, Barb, is a hot topic for me and always has been. But I'd like to get your view on how you think we can get to convince salespeople and indeed sales management that customer experience management isn't something that simply happens at the front end, okay, at the beginning. We bring the flowers, we buy the chocks, we open the door, we're very attentive at the foreplay stage. And as soon as they become customers or clients, then our interest seems to dissipate. Whereas actually their interest, the buyer's interest, increases because they trust us, because we've transacted with them. And this is really where we should be making hay. I mean, we should be making the most of the relationship to ensure that both parties get maximum benefit from it. And the other word that you use was value, which it's an excellent word. I mean, what can we do, Barb?
Well, I think, again, this goes back to having a conversation with sales management. So we all know, I mean, you'd have to be under a rock if you don't know the statistics that actually the cost of customer acquisition, is high. And so once somebody becomes a customer, your ability to expand your offering inside an organization is really, really important. I mean, if you only sell one product, okay, I get it. You have to constantly be on the search for new business. But in many, many, many cases, organizations have greater opportunity inside their current accounts. But it gets back to the measurement. More often than not, I see people more heavily measured on the go get new business side than they are on the expand inside your current accounts. Now, maybe it's not that first rep who developed the business and moved on, but certainly if that gets transitioned over to an account manager, then they should be held accountable for really sourcing new business opportunities. So I think in that case, it's really about leadership and the measurement. Because look, people are going to, if I know my performance review hinges on the number of emails I've sent and the phone calls I've made or the number of new accounts I brought into the business, that's where I'm going to focus my attention. So if leaders want to drive new behavior, I think they have to shift how they measure.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the reality is it costs 15 times now to sell to a new customer or prospect as it does an existing one. And, I'm not surprised that we're witnessing so much what I call commercial promiscuity, because companies are not applying the same level of incentive to customer retention as they are to the winning of new business, which is absolutely ludicrous. Certainly most of my clients have now got in place a VP of customer retention to
Yes.
make sure that, you know, if we spend so much time and so much money winning that business, only to watch it drip out at the other end, whilst we fill the front end again with a new set of clients, what is the point of all of that? Absolute commercial nonsense.
Yes, and there is no point. And it also gets back to what you said just a minute ago, Jonathan. Many of the sales leaders coming up in the ranks, let's face it, back in the day, I mean, I started back in technology sales 25 plus years ago, you know, the options weren't what they are now, and the internet didn't exist then. So, you know, when a buyer was looking around at options, many times they're looking at the local offerings, right? And so there was less competition. And so I think that once a customer came on board, there was a higher likelihood they'd kind of stay with you because the options weren't as unlimited as they are now. And because we do business globally, companies are not shy about doing business with companies well outside of their local geography. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. You've got this old mindset that they're thinking, oh, once they become a customer, you know, that's it. No, it's not it. They can drop you like a hot potato at any second.
Yes, of course. You know, I mean, there is that mindset, isn't there? Well, they're on board now. They've bought something. If they want to buy something else, they'll get back in contact with us again. And actually, you know, in a survey I saw, which I often quote, from the Institute of Sales and Marketing Management here in the UK, they surveyed, I think, 10,000 organizations. And the number one reason why organizations changed supplier was, without any question, because they felt ignored, because they weren't getting the attention that they expected or the respect. So somebody came along, and it wasn't a company coming along and offering a new shiny deal with more discount. It was simply someone came along and made them feel beautiful again, and they moved.
There you go.
Simple as that. Simple as that. Anyway, okay, Barb, do you want to let everyone know how they can make contact with you?
Well, sure. People can find me on Twitter at Barbara Giamanco. Go to LinkedIn. I'm Barbara Giamanco. Would love to hear from you. Let me know that you heard the broadcast here on Top Sales World. Would love to know that. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit our website at scs-connect.com, or certainly call me in the United States in Atlanta, +1 404 647 4925. Would love to chat with you.
Marvelous. Okay, well, thank you again, Barb. It was an excellent presentation. Really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you, Jonathan.
Okay, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that too. And if you want to see more of Barbara, she is one of Top Sales World, the Top Sales Magazine feature writers for 2017. And she's also one of our regular contributors. So you'll find lots about Barb over at Top Sales World. The Academy continues. We're releasing 2 recordings a week on Mondays and Thursdays. It kicked off at the beginning of April, goes all the way through to July 20th. So do keep coming back and listening to some absolutely superb presentations. I particularly am enjoying this season. I really am. That's it for now. This is Jonathan Farrington. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.